Welcome to Fraudulent Feelings with Fatima podcast, where we dive into real conversations that shape our professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Fatima Nash, and today we're exploring a topic that so many of us wrestle with, yet rarely discuss openly: imposter syndrome. Have you ever felt like you're not good enough, like your success is a result of luck, or that you don't truly deserve your accomplishments? You're not alone. Imposter syndrome impacts high achievers, leaders, professionals at all levels, and even the ones who seem to have it all together. In this episode, we'll break down what imposter syndrome is, how it sneaks into our mindset, and most importantly, how you can push back against it. Together, we'll share insights, stories, and actionable strategies to help you embrace your worth and own your success. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's get into it. Yeah, it's a whole podcast. We're going to share our fraud feelings with our audience. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit, turn it over to you, and then we'll jump right in. I am an imposter syndrome survivor, Cyndi and colleagues. I'm a consultant and I do freelance business coaching on the side. And I'm dedicated to supporting first-generation business leaders. I developed a practice on the side. Oh my gosh. So over the last year, I've been freelancing and talking to folks such as yourselves that are doing great things in your market. And I just happen to hang out with first-generation business leaders, and I love it. I love chatting about the challenges of being a first-generation business leader, maybe not having the generational background as a first-generation business leader. Maybe the first-generation business leader is also a first-generation college student like myself. And so I love cheerleading and chatting with those folks. So joining us is Cyndi Manuel, who is also a first-generation business owner, CEO of the Delta Principal. Cyndi, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'm so excited to be on here with you. Aside from being the founder and CEO and change strategist and consultant of the Delta Principal, which is almost 3 years old, which is crazy to me when I think about that. Thank you. I also get to co-host a podcast called the Her Resources Podcast, which we had you, Coach Fatima, on our podcast with us, myself and Linda Misigata. Shout out to Linda, who is my co-host. And we talked about imposter syndrome. And so, I'm also a mom. I have a couple of kids who are amazing human beings. I am a wife. We live in Denver, and we've got 2 dogs. One is very geriatric, 14 years old. I was just telling Fatima that I had to take her out at 1 o'clock this morning, and in a -3, I think is what it was at that time. Yeah, it's winter.
So cold. Yeah, it's winter. It's winter.
And then we have a puppy named Buckley who is 10 months old. So great life. Yeah.
Yes, you do. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Cyndi, you and I worked together a few years back at Workforce Insight is where we met. And loved it. Yes, I have such fond memories of me coming on board, thinking I knew all the things and being hitched to your wagon on the change management side of the house as I was developing content and supporting our clients and our consultants with client success. And so, yes, we go back a few years. And so I'm really, really, really grateful for all of my connections across the years, because as I continue to explore my creative side and think about my side gig, it's awesome to kind of go back home, so to speak, to friends, right? And do stuff like this. So I'm excited. So welcome everyone. On today's episode of Fraudulent Feelings with Fatima, we'll talk about imposter syndrome, what it means to us, and some tips and tricks on you won't really cure imposter syndrome, but
Nope.
definitely share how we can beat it, get through it, support each other on it. So tell me, Cyndi, how would you describe imposter syndrome as a first generation business owner?
Well, so I want to just take a step back
Yeah,
because this is not my first time being a business owner. I tried this before, which adds to the imposter
imposter
syndrome.
syndrome.
So back in 2005, I had a business with a business partner. It was called Shape Up to Ship Out. And she was a travel agent. We had it was a workout facility. It was circuit workout, kind of like Curves,
Hmm.
if you know what a
Hmm.
Curves was.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't even know if they're still around. But anyway, we had this facility, which I absolutely loved. We got to work out with people, teach them how to take care of themselves, which I absolutely loved. However, a Curves went in across the street and our business just died. And so that was my first try
Hmm.
at owning my own
Hmm.
business.
Hmm.
So talk about like sort of something added on to when then you try to do it again and become a woman-owned business to say, gosh, I've failed before. What am I thinking? Um, but I think imposter syndrome to me is just where you kind of question, what am I thinking? Why am I doing this? Who's watching? What are they thinking? It's all the feels, which we
Yes,
know logically, right? That everybody has to start somewhere.
for
You have
sure.
to put one foot in front of the other, but it does feel like a huge magnifying glass and a mirror all at the same time.
All at the same time,
All at
right?
the same time.
And there's lights and glitter, and it feels like the media is there. It feels like everybody's watching you, your every move, right? So when you think about your experience next to the curves back in the day, what do you think your biggest learning experience was from your first? And I would not like to label it as failure. It sounds like a learned opportunity.
That's
So
exactly.
talk to me about that. Like what stood out from you for you those years ago as a first generation business owner?
Yeah, and yeah, it's a great question because that's what I think you should ask. So all these people that you see who are in the media, who are like knocking it out of the park and doing a great job, right? They all started somewhere. You just
Hmm.
maybe don't know what their story was
Hmm.
behind all of it. It's like it's not the
Hmm.
glitz and glamour all the time. It's
Hmm.
not the glitz and glamour right away. Nobody gets that lucky. You have to put in the reps. And so initially my heart was broken. I'm not going to lie. I thought, gosh, this could have been this amazing thing. And it was. And I loved the people that came in. I had a great
Hmm.
business partner. It was a phenomenal experience. It just wasn't the right time, the right location. It wasn't going to work.
Sure.
So I think number one, making the choice to say it's not going to work. That was an
Hmm.
owie, but it was still, I felt very proud at the time that we both determined this is not worth us um, risking money to our families, to support our families, to continue to do this. The
Hmm.
writing's on the wall in a big
Hmm.
roller, a
Sure.
big paint roller. So um, it was heartbreaking, but I did kind of look at it. So I love that you said this, Fatima. I did kind of look at it as, what do I take from this then? Even though it broke my heart, what am I going to take from this? So what I took from it was I loved the fact that it was something that I was proud of, something that my husband was cheering me on. My daughter at the time was a little itty bitty, and she would come in and take some of the hand weights and walk around. I still have pictures of Kylie doing that, which I absolutely love. My son was a huge advocate of it. Like, I loved that my family was behind me 100%. So I thought, okay, when I decide to do this again, I want to do something that where I feel like I'm going to make myself and my family proud. Also something where I can make some money, that might be helpful.
Be helpful just a little bit.
And yeah, and then something where I can serve other people. So much like we did at Shape Up to Ship Out, I felt like we served people. I want to take that whole philosophy. How do I create that as a part of your why, right?
Right.
That's how you kind of keep going on those days where you're like, what the heck was I thinking? And who's
Mm.
watching? And why am
And
I
who's
doing this?
watching and why am I
Mhm.
doing this? Yeah. I feel like for me, and thank you for sharing that, for me, as a first generation business owner, I think that I feel like I'm expected to know all the things. I
Mm,
feel like
yes.
because I come from corporate, because I'm not 22 anymore, I'm expected to have all of this in the bag. I'm expected to have all the tools. I'm expected to know all the answers. I'm expected to play all the roles. And
Mhm.
even though
Yes.
we know that is not true, in my head, that's what I get up and put on my body. Those are the clothes that I wear. And
Yeah.
so it's really hard to shake uncomfortable feelings when they're so attached to you, so to speak, right? So I have had, I don't know, maybe this is my sixth LLC. Like, I really love deploying LLCs. I don't know, maybe it's from when I was a kid and wanted to be a businesswoman and walk around in clickety clackety shoes, but we have a couple of organizations under our belt as a family. But this business venture that I just jumped into is solely Fatima. It's
Mm,
Fatima's brand. It's everything. I don't discuss, make decisions, collaborate. It is just Fatima. And that
mm.
is very frightening. Even though I love it and I love what I'm doing in the market, I love the conversations I get to have, it's still very, very challenging. It feels very lonely. And some of that is on purpose, where I'm doing this because I want a chance to be creative and explore. But
Yes.
some of it
Yes.
is because I'm so afraid of what someone's going to say, think, or feel,
Mm,
because I already have such critical thoughts about myself and if I should be doing this, how I should be doing it, what should my nail color be, what should the logo look like, how should you, what's your tone, what's your voice, like all of that. And so
it's a lot.
I can imagine as I keep going deeper into this entrepreneurial world that I'm in, I don't really think the voices are going to quiet down. Do they quiet down?
I'm sorry to tell you that they don't. I mean,
Oh,
there's days, but
Cyndi.
I think there's some things that can be done. And so you hit on something really important. First of all, congratulations. Like take a moment, right? I think none of us do that enough. We don't, and I think this is part of being an entrepreneur is I think the DNA of being an entrepreneur is you're a high achiever. So therefore, you put on the clothes as you talked about, right? And you put a lot of pressure on yourself. So I think we
Yes.
have to sometimes just take a moment and just say, I'm doing the thing and I'm building the
Mhm.
plane while I'm doing it while I'm
Mhm.
flying it, but I'm doing the thing. And so you have to just kind of find moments
Yeah.
where you maybe look in the mirror and go, damn, I
I did do
did
that.
it. I
Yeah,
did it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But your point is so valid because I am extremely type A personality and I'm a little
not
bit of a
me.
perfectionist. Not you,
No, I'm just kidding.
Cyndi. We drink from the same water
We do.
bottles on that one.
Fire hose. Yeah.
Fire hose, yes. And I have to really, really, really make a conscious effort of smelling the roses while it's happening,
Yes.
right? Because when you don't, for me, you lose track, lose sight, and that's when the cycle just continues to run. When you don't go back and check your own fraudulent feelings with data, right? So, one
Yes.
of the tools that I have in my toolbox that I walk around with mentally is okay, I'm going into a situation. I'm feeling a little nervous. There's a little bit of butterflies going on. And the fraud feeling comes up and says, you don't belong here. You're not
Mm,
talented. You don't have the skill set. You're not strong enough. You don't have the experience enough. And it will stop me in my tracks. And so the toolbox is very handy when you use it and you go back and you think about where you've been successful in a similar task, similar situation, similar event. And when
yep.
you start thinking about that, the positivity rises
There you go.
the butterflies go down a little bit because you're not focused on getting in front of Cyndi and having a killer presentation. Your body would normally do that if you're skilled in that and you've made effort and you've done this. Maybe it's the content that you're struggling with, maybe it's your presentation skills or whatever it might be. But when you
Mhm.
focus on where you've been successful previously, it
Yeah,
will allow you to focus on what's in front of you and it will push down those fraudulent feelings because they are in fact fraud because you're meant to be here.
that's right.
You're meant to do whatever it is your heart contents. And I have to remind myself of that almost daily.
And us doing this, Fatima, here's one of my tools in the toolbox, right? When I first went out on my own, someone reached out to me via LinkedIn. And she said, I'm a woman business owner too. Would you like to talk? And I said,
Mhm.
yes, please, I would. And so we started to talk. There's another lady that Linda Misegatis introduced me to named Candy Martin. She
Mhm.
reached out to me.
Love
We reached out.
candy.
She's wonderful, isn't she? And she
Mhm.
was
She
like,
is.
would you like to talk? There's so many examples of this, right? Where we reach out to each other. And now I'm doing it too. Like I see somebody new on LinkedIn, I reach out to them and I say, hey, would you like to connect? And
It's
I
so sweet.
surround myself with good people.
Mhm.
Some of them are a good fit for me with my personality. Doesn't mean that they're not good if they don't fit with my
Mhm.
personality,
Mhm.
but I have sort of found my community.
Mhm.
And so that loneliness that you talk about,
Mhm.
I think when you're alone is when some of that negative self-talk starts to happen. When you can
Fair.
do like we're doing today, right? Having a conversation with someone else and saying, hey, tell me what you have experienced related to this. Here's
Absolutely.
some ideas that I am working with, and trusting that the person's going to, give you some good advice around that. Here's some things I'm struggling with, and trusting
Mhm.
that the person's going to say, guess what? I've struggled with that too. So
Mhm.
glad to know that because I'm struggling with
Mhm.
that right now too.
Mhm.
So having that
Mhm.
community,
Mhm.
that is the biggest tool in my toolkit.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I agree with that, and I did not think about community being a part of my tool set. Recently, and we chatted about this, I acquired a franchise under my kind of stack of LLCs. And first generation acquiring a business, first generation having four LLCs and a
It's
franchise.
amazing.
It's crazy. Um, Super blessed, very, 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 very grateful. But I say all that to say the community,
Yes.
this coaching community that found me, adopted me, loved on me. I've never been around so many Fatimas, like
Oh, I love
legit.
that.
So
Yes.
there's a communication assessment that all incoming coaches have to take, right? So I fly out to London. There was a regional conference, and I just had to meet these people as soon as possible. Like we
That is
connected over the
awesome.
phone and over the computer and all that jazz. But I wanted to touch them. I wanted to squeeze them. I wanted to hug their necks. And so I flew like a crazy to London by myself. Um, and when I met them, they started talking to me in this language of this disc profile language. You're a
Mhm.
high D, you're a high I, and I'm a high D too, and I'm a high I, and we're gonna be best friends, and I'm looking at these people, Cyndi, like, what are y'all talking about? And also, I'm not a high D. My name is Fatima. Like, I don't know what you're saying, um, but turns out I am super duperly attracted to other Fatimas and other not so Fatimas too, but those that are super, super direct, high energy, use their hands all the time. They wave, they're very animated. Um, and I walked into a room with a bunch of Fatimas and I fell in love. But not
Aw, those
only
were your people.
did I fall in love because those were my people, and yeah, I'm going to get a little deep on this call today, Cyndi. But I fell in love with myself because I saw myself differently.
Mm. There you go.
The
It's
community.
the mirror. That is the
It's the
mirror.
mirror.
That's the gift.
That's
Yep.
the gift, right? And
Yes.
so as you were talking about community, I had never thought about it that way. As I was listening to you and thinking about Stephen Doyle in my head, shout out to Stephen Doyle. I just love him. He's a part of my new community. I saw Fatima to the point where he passed me the mic and was like, "Do you just want to run this? Do you want to just take this and just run the rest of this session? Because
I
we
could
won't
totally
stop."
see you doing that. I
And
could see you doing that.
I mean, my hand was like, I mean, I'm jumping up and I'm so, everything they were pouring into me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So, yes, those out there listening, find yourself and other
Find
people,
your
y'all. Find your
people.
people.
Yep.
Love on your people. They will love on you. They will be that mirror for you. And you can beat
Yes.
those fraud feelings. Yes.
One other thing I would add to that too, because I agree. Like I have found people who are further along in their journey and so they tell me, okay, here's what you have to look forward to. Here's some decisions you're going to have to make. Here's some things not to do, which I've started to share that with people too. Like,
For
here's a
sure.
few landmines. Don't step on those because I sure did. But
Mm-hmm.
also having someone who is discerning in your life too. So that's my husband. So I'll say, I have an idea and I'll start to run it past him and he'll be like, and we had to decide or determine how to have these conversations. Because at
Right.
first I was like, what the
Baselines.
heck? Yeah.
Right.
Why are you telling me I'm
Where's
crazy? Yeah. What? So anyway, we figured out how to have these conversations. But now when we have these conversations and Cyndi says, I have an idea, Jack's like, okay, and that's a really great idea. And I see where you're coming from. And have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? And that's really valuable too, Fatima, because
it
I'm
is.
like dreaming and inventing and I'm three
Mm-hmm.
steps ahead or five
Mm-hmm.
steps ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have someone else in my life that helps
Mm-hmm.
me with the administrative side of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And if it were not for Emily, I don't know what I would do because I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And she's like, okay, and that's awesome. And have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?
Right.
The logistical stuff to
Yeah.
get there. And I'm like, ooh, that's really good. So you also you also need some people who can kind of give
I
you
like
the
that.
reverse side as
Mm-hmm.
well and different ways of thinking to
Yeah,
balance.
no. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a really good idea. And, for me, starting out, I may not be able to compensate folks with, cash, but I can absolutely do that for trade, right? And
Absolutely.
so I have someone that I call my go-to-market queen. Her name is Tana. She's like a woman of all trades. She is a principal, a school principal, high school principal, but she also is a designer and she
Oh,
also
there you
does
go.
crafts and all types of things. So I come to her with color schemes and how do I want to show up? And she's like, no, girl, that's not what we're going to do. This is what you need to do. You need to research this, do this, choose this, do that. And at first, and we've been friends for, my goodness, 16 years or so now. But at first, I would scratch my head and, ooh, I don't want to share with her because she's like putting down my ideas. But what I realized is that not everybody can agree with Fatima. And if I really want to beat my imposter syndrome, I need to have a well-rounded thought process about all things. And
Yes.
so you
And a
need
safe
those
place.
people in a safe
Yes.
place. Yes, in a safe
There
place.
you
Yes.
go. Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you on that. Good call there. You're making me think about my community and those who have aided in my imposter syndrome uh challenges differently. So I appreciate that. I wasn't expecting that today. So thank you. A little aha
Oh,
moment. Thank you.
absolutely.
I
Yes.
appreciate that. I
Just
appreciate
don't be
that.
afraid to ask for help.
Yeah,
And
that's the first
honestly,
first
most
step.
people want to provide that help and they
Yeah.
they appreciate being asked. And when I get asked questions, kind of going back to imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
when someone asks me something, I'm like, oh, I have something valuable to add to this person's life, to their career, to whatever.
They appreciate
And
it.
I'm
Okay. They
so,
feel heard.
yeah, it helps with the imposter syndrome, right? Because it's
No,
like,
that
oh,
makes sense.
there's
That
value in
makes
there.
sense. That makes sense. So at the Delta Principal, just thinking about what you do full time, I'd love to chat a little bit about that and about how you support others to change in your world. And sometimes that's
Yeah.
kind of beating imposter syndrome and imposter thinking as well. So I would love to hear a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. Um, so one of my favorite things to do is to support people through change. I started my career years ago in human resources, so I love people. And when I moved into change management, I was working at the city and county of Denver back in 2007, and
Mhm.
there were 15,000 people across the city I was born in. So I felt very dedicated to these people
Mhm.
who were moving from paper and post-its to
Mhm.
a system called Kronos at the time. It's now
Mhm.
called
Mhm.
UKG.
Mhm.
And my first thought was, again, imposter syndrome, like, how in the world am I going to help 15,000 individuals at all these different kinds of agencies through change? So over the years, last almost 18 years now, as I've been doing this, one of my biggest joys is teaching leaders how to lead change. So, and it's really kind of something where you first have to sort of, again, hold up that mirror. How do you feel about change? How do
Mhm.
you approach change? First,
Mhm.
you have to kind of get right with yourself, right? Put
Mhm.
on your oxygen
Mhm.
mask first before you
Mhm.
help other people, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then sort of helping them to align with other leaders. How do you and your counterparts sort of align on this change so that you're all going out of the gate and you're saying the same things? It's not, I'm going to go to mom for this, I'm going to go to dad for that.
Mhm.
And then how do you support your teams? And it's not just a spread it like peanut butter philosophy. It's
Right.
each person is an individual. And how do
Mhm.
you determine how they feel about the change? Because each change is different. They bring in baggage from home, right? Maybe my dog passed away or something.
Mhm.
I'm bringing that
Mhm.
to work with me,
Mhm.
whatever it
Mhm.
happens to be. So
Mhm.
those are the things. And really, when you talk about imposter syndrome and change, who doesn't question themselves, especially a leader, when it's time to go through change? And so I always just suggest to leaders that they be vulnerable, that they be truthful, that they be transparent, honest. I feel this too, Fatima, but we're going to do this
Mhm.
together. We're going to go through this together.
Oh my goodness, Cyndi, I resonate so much with what you said, and here's what I had in my mind as you were talking. So we talked a little bit about how I feel when I have imposter syndrome, and I feel like I'm on a red carpet and I have all these flashing lights and all these people are pulling on me and all of that. As a leader, you have all of that plus the people you support. So they're
Yes.
all looking up at you like, hey, what about me? What about this idea? Don't you love me? Don't you think I'm great? What about my promotion? I don't like it here. Fix this problem. Fix this process.
Yeah. Yes.
And what I love the most and what stood out to me, and I resonate with this so much, and I try to use this in my practice, but more importantly, internally, is putting that mask on first, practicing that self-care, not
Yes.
just my hot, steamy bath, because girl loves a hot, steamy bath, but also what am I
Why wouldn't you?
doing for my
Mm.
right? What am I doing for myself to organize myself here? And when
Yes.
you have to initiate or you're the executive sponsor of a change, you have to put your mask on first and look in the mirror, practice self-care and think, how am I going to feel about this? Forget how they're
Right.
going to feel. Let me get my game
I need to get
straight.
right
Let
with
me with
myself first.
myself. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. I
Yeah,
love that you
yeah,
said that, Fatima. And
yeah.
I mean, we expect a lot of our leaders, but they
Heck
don't come
yeah.
into leadership with this cape that's tucked in behind their shirt, right? They come into leadership maybe not having ever led, this whole entire team of human beings that's relying on them now. And oh, by the way, those human beings' families are relying on them. And you know what I'm saying? So it's not, yes, there's a lot. There's a
It's a
lot.
lot. It's
So
a pebble, right? It just
yes,
it's a pebble, it's a domino effect, it's all of that. And that's a really good point. Like when you are leading people, I mean, I feel like second to being a parent, it's the most important role because you have such an effect, positively or
yes,
negatively, on so many people as
that's
a
right.
as a
Right.
correlation. So I mean, that's a really, really good point. And our leaders just like us as first time moms, we don't know what we don't know. And so we got to give them a little bit of grace And we have to remind them to smell their
Absolutely.
roses, and we have to celebrate them too. Even as employees, we need to be able to celebrate our managers. So good point. Well,
Yeah.
we're coming up a
Thank
little bit
you.
on the end of our time, but before I let you go, I could talk to you for the rest of the afternoon.
And we will.
And we will. Right, right.
Yeah.
What do you want to leave our listeners, our audience with as far as what is the most important aspect of combating imposter syndrome as a business leader?
First of all, thanks for inviting me onto your amazing podcast. I think this is going to resonate and help so many people, Fatima, which of course it is. That's you. That's just you in a nutshell.
Yes. Thank you.
And so I think the one last thing that I would say that I haven't already said is, and you said it kind of what you were just mentioning, is give yourself some grace. You know, we are not perfect. And in the middle of the night, when you wake up and you're like, what the heck was I thinking? Why would anyone come to me for this? Just sort of take a step back, give yourself some grace, give yourself some time, and then just know that you're enough. You're doing great. We all have a story of the reason we feel this way, right? If we're perfectionists like you and I are.
Yes.
Have your, tap into your community, talk to other people. Don't be by yourself. Like, really just take care of yourself and give yourself some grace, and you're going to be just fine.
Yes. Well, I might take some of that advice and apply it directly to myself as well. But I love that. That's a wonderful way to take us home. And I really hope that the audience can get something from our time today. I know that I definitely did. So I really appreciate you, Cyndi. Where can folks visit you? How can they contact you?
LinkedIn. You can either find me under Cyndi Manuel, or you can find me under the Delta Principle, or you can tap into our podcast, the Her Resources podcast, where we get to talk to amazing people like you, Fatima. So yeah, thanks for asking. Thanks for inviting me to join you today. And all the best to you, Fatima, in this journey. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you so much. Will you come back?
I would love to.
Okay, great.
I would love to.
Great.
Thank
well,
you.
I thank you very much. And I appreciate everyone tuning in and listening to us discuss our fraud feelings. And till next time, thank you very much. Have a good one. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode, where we explored how to quiet those nagging imposter feelings that hold us back. Remember, you've earned your seat at the table. Own it with confidence. If this resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. Speaking of which, episode 5 is one you won't want to miss. Fraudulent Feelings No More. We'll be joined by mental health advocate and therapist Shannon Page, who will break down the root causes of imposter syndrome and share powerful tools and techniques to overcome it for good. Thanks again for listening, and as always, take care of yourself. Keep thriving. See you next time.